So, your life is trash. It's not at all what you want it to be. And you just sit there and you blame other people and the circumstances that you had and the things that you were given your whole life on why your life is the way that it is. But yet you do nothing to be better, you do nothing to change it. And I'm sorry, but I have no tolerance for it. And I mean, you can sit there and be like, well, what in the world do you know about pain and struggle and, bad upbringing and blah, blah, blah. I could write a book about my life and all the things that I've been through. And I think that's why I am the way that I am, honestly. And I was thinking about it this morning because I got up at 4. I couldn't sleep last night. So I woke up and I just decided, okay, well, I'm just going to scroll on TikTok or, watch a video or, I don't know, do something until I got bored. And I was like, this is not even satisfying me anymore. So I said, well, I'll get up and I'll go for my walk early. It took me a couple hours of laying in bed and debating it to even get up and go. And when I was out there, I was like, I'm tired. I'm tired. That's what I'm going to label myself as today, is tired. So because I'm tired, I'm probably just going to do the bare minimum. I'm going to do just maybe a short walk just to say that I did something. And as I was going, I always listen to videos along my walks or some kind of positive something. And as I was walking, I was thinking to myself, because the video kind of had something to do with this, and it was basically saying, your life is the way that it is because you refuse to fix it. And it all stems from fear. And I got to thinking, I'm like, what is my fear this morning? That I'm going to be tired, that I'm going to be exhausted, that my body's going to hurt if I do my regular routine, or maybe I won't get enough sleep tonight, or XYZ, whatever. So I'm making up all these excuses in my head as to why I can't do this, right? Holding myself back. And then I said to myself, do you want to achieve your goal, or do you want to satisfy your emotion right now? And I was like, no, it's not even a question. I want to achieve my goal, and I'm a very impulsive person, very impulsive. So this has always been a struggle for me my whole life because, I've been highly addicted to sugar and stuff like that. So, and emotional eating and whatnot. So whenever I was feeling some kind of bad emotion or something went wrong in my life, I'd be like, I don't need to exercise because I'm just too depressed to exercise right now. I'm too depressed to cook food. I'm too depressed to take care of my body. I'm too depressed to do anything. So I need to just order food, junk, and just sit here and wallow in my own self-pity. And I would always do that because at the time it would probably give me a good dopamine hit, right? But later on, did it? Not at all. I've been struggling with some things lately, and instead of letting it consume me and being depressed, I have chosen to make something positive out of pain. So every time I felt miserable and my anxiety was coming and I felt just like I was gonna have a heart attack, I told myself I could sit here, I could eat, I could cry, I could be miserable, which would make me feel good at the moment, but later on, will it? And the answer was always no. So I said, what will I do right now that feels uncomfortable? in the moment, but will feel good later on in the long term. And that's walking. So every time I felt stressed, I'd go for at least an hour walk. And there was not one time that after about 10 minutes of walking that I regretted it. Because I know later on, I'm going to make my body healthier, my mind healthier. I never felt bad exercising. It's just, it's hard to get there, right? So I pushed and pushed, and I was really thirsty, honestly. And I kept saying to myself, you know, I'm going to dehydrate myself because I have no water with me if I keep going. And then I said, is this just something that my mind is telling me so that I'll back down and quit? Or should I just continue to be consistent? I have quit everything my whole life because I didn't get immediate results. How do I expect anything to, you know, grow and build if I don't be consistent with it every single day? Because then I can look at myself and say, you gave up a million times. You're the reason you're fat. You're the reason that you have excess weight on. And sitting here being upset at everybody else who isn't, and being jealous and envious and annoyed, what is that going to solve? Because I'm going to sit here and still have excess weight on that I don't want. I'm still going to be unhealthy. It got me thinking to like all these different circumstances in my life. And, you know, I've always been somebody who subconsciously, I truly, truly think like I've always wanted better for my kids. Anything that I have not loved growing up about my childhood, I've made it a point for the last 18 years that I've been a mother to be better and do better for them. I've done everything in my power to do it. And, you know, it's funny because I get it all the time where people say, you're so lucky. You're so lucky that, you know, your kids are so well behaved and so sensible and such good human beings. And they're not into bad things and whatever. You know, they're not perfect. Nobody is. But they're really good kids. You're so lucky. Or you're so lucky that you know, have the relationship that you do. Or you're so lucky that you have good relationships with your family. Or that, you know, you're so lucky that you have such a good work ethic and, you know, your business and blah, blah, blah. And the funniest part about it is it's so triggering to me and used to just irritate the life out of me, because I used to think to myself, you have no idea the amount of work that I have put in to get to where I am. The amount of struggle, the amount of pain, the amount of consistent work that I have put in to shape who my children are. Almost every day we have deep conversations and I check in with them and in with their feelings, and, you know, I try to be very hyper aware of, you know, anything that's going on in their lives, and we have a very open, you know, trusting, honest relationship. That was work, an extreme amount of work. You know, people don't realize behind the scenes how much goes into it, or how much you had to suck at something to become good at it. You know, that's another thing I get all the time is, you're so naturally talented with, you know, your work and all the things that you try. But what they don't realize is that I beat myself up 100,000 times practicing before I made something public that I wanted to, try or do on people. I just didn't try something once and it was good. I don't know if I've ever tried anything once and was great at it my whole life, honestly. So that's the part I think that is really hard for people to accept, and they don't realize, because everybody's so used to like instant gratification, right? Like, if I want something right now, I can just go on my phone and order it and it'll be at my door within 30 minutes maybe. And we see things on the internet and we compare our lives to those, but really we have no idea what goes in behind that. Like those people that started all these businesses and have all these properties and money and whatever, most people did not just get that handed to them. Like, not everybody has all this wealth that they can just have handed down to them. Not me, that's for sure. And I think one of the best things that you can do is turn pain into power and turn your fears into power. Because anything that you're afraid of is exactly what you should do. And I have been afraid of everything my entire life. And if I didn't face my fears, see, this is the worst part, okay? This is what I'm trying to help people prevent, is that I am so stubborn. My fears are so strong that God or the universe or whatever you want to believe in or call it, okay, has forced me to be like, I was given a million easy options on how to, face my fears. And I ignored every one of them until it came down to being forced to. I'm being put in these really hard situations where I had no other choice but to face it. Don't do that. Make things easier on yourself and just learn without being stubborn. Like, I can look back at a million situations of my life. Like, I'm a completely different person than who I was as a child, who I was 10 years ago, whatever. I always come here and talk, but sometimes people come in and then I'm like, oh, do I look like a crazy person? Whatever. I wouldn't be sitting in this car right now that I bought if I didn't face my fears. I gave myself a label my whole life, okay? I gave myself this label that I am afraid to drive. I don't know why. I used to have dreams as a child that like I would get in car accidents, and it was like a reoccurring dream. It was very weird, but I think that that's kind of maybe what it stemmed from. And I always told myself, I'm never going to drive. I'm too afraid, blah, 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 blah. And it came down to the point where it was like, I had so much guilt as a mom that my kids were missing out on things because I was too afraid to face my fears to get my license. And that didn't sit right with me, because I thought, why should they suffer? That's not fair because of me. And that's not something that I want to teach them. So I think I was 25 when I first went and tried to get my beginners. And, in my province, I live in Canada. In my province, you can get your beginners at 14. So from 14 to 25, I literally wrote my learner's exam 8 times. I failed 7 and passed it on my 8th try. And then I got my actual license at 28. I bought my first car as soon as I got my learners at 25. I just wasn't allowed to like drive it alone. And then when I was 28, I was allowed to drive it alone. And I look back and I drive everywhere now and I'm like, I couldn't imagine like the freedom that I have now compared to how much I didn't before, and having to wait around on people. You know, I was forced into that situation due to a lot of stuff that I probably won't get into, but yeah, it's wild. Or, you know, even my career. Like by trade, I'm a hairstylist, and you know, I went to school I think at 27 because I had kids when I was young and I was doing the whole mom thing for a while. And anyways, I had to go to the city 4 hours away to go to school. That was terrifying, you know, because my husband had to commute 4 hours where he worked in my city, and that was, you know, stressful in our relationship. And my kids were going back and forth and whatever, a whole lot of things. I was terrified. I also, again, didn't drive at the time by myself, and I was in the city by myself basically. So I had to catch the bus, which was terrifying. I did it. I had to. And then when I got out of school, I started working at salons, which I was terrified because I've always been somebody that's had extremely bad social anxiety out of fear that people wouldn't like what I had to say or think I was weird or whatever. They just wouldn't like me. So I kept my mouth shut and never spoke to anybody. Looking back now, I think that that's kind of weird of me, because I'd be in social settings and literally not say one word for hours. Just be like that person, and people would be trying to talk to me and I'd be like, kind of weird. But it's funny, like how far I've come, and you know, I still have a ways to go, but I remember thinking to myself, this is what I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to do hair since I was a little girl. And if I don't go to the city and do school, I'm never going to do it. Then I have no room to complain. So I started working at salons. I was terrified when I got customers because I feel like they could tell that I wasn't comfortable doing things, right? Sometimes I still get that anxiety a little bit, but I push through it. But anyways, I just had to sit there and be like, I'm never going to get better at this. And no matter what I do, even if I suck, there's still going to be people that love me for me. There's still going to be people that hate my guts, even if I'm great at what I do. It doesn't matter. They could just not like my face, you know? Either way, you got to keep going. You can't use this as an excuse to do nothing and to not achieve your goals, right? I wouldn't have even met my husband if I didn't take the chance to, you know, we started talking online 10 years ago, and if I didn't take the chance to actually meet up with him, which I was really debating on doing, we wouldn't have been together. So many things I had to take a chance for because I was sick and tired of using my fears as a reason as to why I couldn't do something, or labeling myself as to why I couldn't do it. I don't want to teach that to my kids. Everything I do it for them, and I do it for myself to show them that it can be done. And it's wild to think about, you know, how people let themselves hold themselves back and then do nothing but complain about it. I remember this one girl that I went to high school with. She was just the meanest person ever. She was so mean. She was such a bully. She would just torture people for no reason. And my little sister was friends with her. And I remember her saying to me, like, oh, you know, like, this person has had a really bad life. You know, give them grace, basically, because they've had a bad life. And I used to think to myself, so have I. And so have you. And so have millions of other people who have things going on in their life. Does that give you an excuse to treat other people like garbage? Or treat yourself like garbage? No. I, in fact, actually just take my pain and my hurt that I've been through in my life and turn it into empathy for other people. Now, I can sit here and empathize with her and say, you know, yeah, she has had a rough go, but let's try to do better. You don't get to just label yourself as a bad person and then just continue to live it. I mean, you can, but stay out of my lane, that's for sure. You know, I used to be a person like that. I used to be very angry, very upset, and sometimes I still get triggered there. Of course, I'm only human, but very mean because I just hated myself and my life and, you know, the things that I've went through. And I was just mean to other people. And every time somebody had something good, I'd be like, oh, well, they only got that because of XYZ. You know, I'm ashamed of it now because I realize that that's just not okay. And it was a me issue and not anybody else. But now I can kind of look back and see that that's how other people operate, right? And it's very sad, but we all have our own lessons to learn. And you can either sit there and be stuck in this misery, or you can say, I'm tired of it. I think that's why I don't have a lot of tolerance for people who make excuses. Because I've been through the worst of the worst in my life. And I treat everybody with respect. I don't judge a soul. I'm kind to everybody until you're not kind to me. Then I just don't have nothing to do with you. But yeah, I don't like to use what happened to me in my life as a reason to why I have to stay stuck. I always want better. I want better for myself, and I want to set a better example for my children. And yeah, I don't think that it's okay. If I didn't do some of the scariest things that I've ever done in my life, I would not have been here today. I don't know where I would have been. There were times where I literally got up in courtrooms and, you know, had my lawyer cancel on me due to conflict of interest, and had to stand up against lawyers, write my own affidavits, and do all the stuff and stand to a judge, and won my cases because I just put it all out there and said it is what it is. If I win, I win. It was meant to be. If not, at least I can say I stood up and did it. And honestly, that was one of my proudest moments, because I did win. You know, a lot of my proudest moments are times where I faced my fears. And I think that's so important. I think holding yourself accountable and stop using your circumstances and your past as an excuse as to why you can't do things. I feel like that's such a waste of life. It's such a waste of life. And unfortunately, things just don't come easy to most people. And if it does come easy, it's not as valuable as you think it would be. You know, you value things that you work hard for. I have worked very hard for my business and my reputation. I've worked very hard on my children. I've worked very hard on, you know, myself and who I am as a person and how I treat people, and, you know, just so many things. And it was because I chose to say, I don't want to be this person forever. I don't want to be in this situation forever. And I can either sit here, mope, whine, make excuses, or I can fix it. There's a very fine line between having empathy for somebody who's been through circumstances and then listening to excuses. That might trigger a lot of people, but it's true. I have been somebody that's used excuses for everything my whole life, and I'm very good at debating them. I'm very good at convincing people that, you know, this is why I can't do this. When in fact, I can. I'm just choosing not to because that's more comfortable in the moment. It's uncomfortable to face your fears. It's uncomfortable to put in work. It's easier to just sit there and eat a bunch of chocolate and ice cream and be overweight and whatever. I mean, it's hard. Of course it is hard. But like, pick your hard. Right? Like, is it better for the hard to be overweight and sick and hating your body? Or do you choose the hard where you get up every morning and be consistent and go for your walks? Or put your time and energy into your business rather than scrolling on TikTok? Spending the time speaking to your children or your relationship and putting in the work there, or just saying, this is not for me, I'm just going to go find another partner, or, you know, my kids can deal with things themselves. They'll learn. What you build is what will prosper. And your life is the way that it is because of the choices that you make every day. And if you don't sit there and continue to find ways to make a change, you're not helping yourself, and you really don't get an excuse to whine. Because that's basically what it is it's whining. Maybe that's not very nice to say, but it's true. I'm speaking to myself too. Like I said, I've done all this. I've been afraid. I've been afraid of everything my whole life. I have let my fear hold me back my entire life and cause so many issues in my life. And it's funny because there's not a person on this earth that I'm afraid of. I'm just afraid of circumstances that haven't even happened. I'm always trying to like protect myself from worst case scenario. When worst case scenario is not even real, that hasn't even happened. And not putting yourself out there and not taking a chance. I think I would rather take a chance and it not work out than to always wonder what if. Because that would eat me alive. What if I didn't go to hair school? What if I didn't start my business? What if I didn't end, the relationships that I ended? I would be in such a worse spot. What if I didn't make amends with people? I wouldn't have them closely in my life now and been given certain opportunities. Your fear is holding you back from everything. And fear is exactly what is going to slingshot you into exactly where you want to be. Anything that scares you is exactly what you should be doing. And sometimes you'll be lucky enough to get people who will kind of like give you a nudge. They'll give you a nudge into becoming your better self, and you can either be like resistant to it, or you can kind of be like, you know what, you're doing this out of love, I should listen because maybe that's a sign. I'm very much listening to the signs lately. I think of it with my partner. Years and years ago, you know, he was kind of at this like dead end job where he hated, but he was a very like fearful person too, as to why we probably attracted each other, right? We fed off each other's vibes. And anyways, this opportunity came up. I had been talking to my mom about a job, and an opportunity came up, and she was like, oh, he should apply. And I mentioned it to him, like, you should apply, like, you'd be great. No, I won't do that, and you know, I'll probably have to take a pay cut, and this and this and this, and all these excuses. And I'm just like, you need to apply. And I like harassed him to do it. And ultimately, he did get the job. It was way more money, way higher position, and then he got an even better job than that and is doing way better. And he's very thankful that he listened and had that nudge, even though he was a pain in the butt about it. But I think it's important to have people like that in your life too, that kind of want to nudge you in the right direction, that actually genuinely care about you and want to see you thrive and want to see you win. And that's not easy because, you know, I'm somebody who doesn't have a lot of people like that in my life, so I've kind of had to do that for myself, which is why I kind of like to do that for other people, because I didn't have that. But, you know, it's good because in different situations where I'm fearful, he will also be like, what are you doing? Like, you're making up all these crazy scenarios in your head that's not even real. Like, snap back to reality. This is your fear talking. Take a chance. And I have also been put in good positions because of things that he's said to me. So this is your kick in the butt to stop being fearful and go after what you want, or shut up, go whine about it and cry about it in your room, and stop annoying everybody around you by telling them the same things over and over, and them giving you the same advice over and over until they've had enough and they no longer give you the advice. Because it's annoying. You're being annoying. Take the advice, help yourself, move on, and at the end, the only one that can do the work is you. You can't hire somebody to do the work for you. You can't force somebody to do the work for you. You can't, you know, make somebody work out for you. You can't make somebody learn the things that you need to learn, these valuable lessons. You have to be the one to do it. So you're going to sit there and whine and cry and say you're depressed and you can't do this because of all these mental health issues. I've got mental health issues too. We all got them. We've all had horrible circumstances. Like I said, I've been through the worst of the worst. I've been through death. I've been through abuse, every kind. I've been through, you know, being broke. I've been through having nothing. I've been through divorce. I've been through, the list goes on and on and on. All the bad things that you can think of, I've been there. I still keep going because I don't think it's productive to sit in my bed and mope and whine. It's not doing anything for me. And it's not doing anything for you. And I think the world just caters and babies people by saying like, oh, you know, like mental health and blah, blah, blah. Like, don't take care of yourself and use mental health as an excuse. You know, let everything go in the trash and not worry about your family and your kids and yourself because, you know, your mental health is bad. Stop using that as an excuse. Stop it. There's no need of it. You don't get to whine if you're not going to fix it. Like, oh my God, go somewhere else and whine. I can't. Harsh or not, sometimes you need tough love. Sometimes you need a kick in the butt because nobody else is going to do it for you. And when people say all this stuff and make excuses for people, it's because they think that you're just a loser. They think that you're a baby. They think that you're incapable. They think that you are just this tiny little thing that just can't do anything for themselves and just, you know, piece of trash on the street. Let's make an excuse for them because, you know, they've had a bad circumstance and they're a lesser form of human. No, we are all the same. We all bleed the same. And you just don't get an excuse from your past to keep living a trash life. Take that with what you will, but it is what it is.